So, today's video is a result of me doing some more writing. So we're about 14 pages in at this point, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot, right? I mean, to write out 14 pages of like deep thought has been more challenging than I had anticipated at this point. And what I was focusing on today was a quote from Camus. So I was working on the section that's on universal truths, about universal laws and the nature of our universe, because if we're going to understand ourselves, then we are creatures of our environment, and our environment is impacted by the rules of the world, and our world is impacted by the rules of the universe. That's where we have to begin. And so Camus says that basically the mind it requires to either understand everything or understand nothing. And in its attempt to understand everything, it uses anthropomorphisms to make sense of the universe. So the idea is that we basically project human understanding onto that which isn't human, which is pretty clear, right? I mean, it's very hard to argue against that. Humans have been doing that forever. We project that onto animals quite often. We project that onto inanimate objects, onto concepts, abstractions, and we project how humans work onto the universe, when in all likelihood the universe does not love, nor care, nor feel. But we project our minds and our understanding because the human brain is confined. It creates this frame for how we're able to understand and engage with the world around us. No matter what truths we come to know, we know them through this frame. I am bound by my perspective, and that is very difficult to get away from. So the next up there is, if that's true, then humans have always projected anthropomorphic conceptions onto the universe and the universal laws. So we understand that through how we think. Now, what do we know about the universe? In some other videos and early in my book, I'm starting to talk about how everything seems to fit in the concept of order versus chaos. And that really is the start of our universe. Every mythos, not every, most, or quite a few, are based off the concept of order being made out of chaos. Something starts with chaos or a void, the empty, the nothing, and it's formed into order. This is the Christian creation myth. This is all kinds of ancient creation myths. This is the Big Bang. This is an ordering of what is nothing. And then from there, the new order always succumbs to a series of chaotic disruptions that will ultimately destroy it. We know this to be true of our universe. From what we can tell scientifically, the universe is dying. Now, it's going to take a very long time. Our sun will have been burnt out for a very long time before this happens, but our universe is not immortal. It will return to chaos, to nothing. Many suggest to be born again because everything else seems to apply to those rules, though that's outside of an understanding that we are capable of, right? That expands past any plausible frame for us to engage with. Now, this is true on the macro scale. We understand this universally. We also understand this mythologically, right? Most mythos also have an end of days, whether that is Ragnarok or that is the four horsemen coming. There is an end, a bringing back of chaos, a final eruption that results in a destruction. And that's true on the smallest possible scale we know. The human body is made of trillions of atomic structures that are exploding and changing and moving and recreating. The body you were born with is dead. Well, depending on how old you are. The body I was born with is gone. Those cells don't exist anymore. This is all new. Everything's been replaced. Some of it more than once, twice, maybe even 3 or 4 times. I'm an entirely new set of cells. This has been a problem for philosophers for a very long time. Right, what is it? Ancient Greek philosophers that were talking about the Jason ship, right? Was the Argonauts perhaps? Regardless, they go, if a ship leaves port and returns, is it the same ship? What if all the crew changes, right? People hop off at different locations, entirely new crew when it turns. Is it still the Argonaut? What if it breaks throughout the trip, right? A board falls off here, a rudder there, a wheel here, and every single piece on it is replaced, but it still remains in name. Is it still the Argonaut? And so this is a very interesting question, because it comes to the idea of what is the self? Is it the sum of the actual physical embodiments, or is it the abstraction of what it is? Is it the conceptual understanding? Is it the soul? And I believe the answer for most of us would be it's the soul. Even though every part of me has died and been reborn, succumbed to chaos and been reordered, I still identify as me. You might say, well, because you have the same personality traits or thing, and that's not true. I was so different at 16. I was such a dick at 16. I am so different now than I was at 11. Well, what about your memories? Does that mean that people with Alzheimer's aren't them? Do they cease to have their personhood because they've lost their memories? Or is it still grandpa? So we come back to this idea of what is the self, and I would argue that the self is the abstractual soul of the individual. So this extends to what is the universe, but an abstract concept of how we interpret and understand the pieces as they die and reorder. Likewise, so is the society and the structure. As long as the idea of the society remains, the people change, the tools change, the buildings change. America is an idea for as long as that idea lasts. Now, we keep that idea alive through certain means. Those are symbols. It's a flag, a cross, further things to represent the abstraction. So this is how a society works. A society remains its society-ness through the artistic abstractions and conceptual understandings, even though the person, places, and things change. This is very hard for communities that have been robbed of that. It's very hard to have that if your community was burned down and succumbed to a genocide, or stripped and brought to another land as slaves and removed of every symbol that they had, or forced and dominated by another culture that comes to control and take over and burn down all your idols. But I suppose the thesis that comes out, the premise that comes out of this idea, is the concept that the self in the society, in this system, is in itself an abstraction that exists through symbolic artistic meaning in the minds of humans. It's a soul. And we can understand how that soul comes to be, but we have to use different tools because the weight of the soul is hard to measure. So how do we measure a society? How do we measure the soul? I suppose that is the premise and challenge of this book. I would argue that it is all a series of circles, constantly engaging and changing, overlapping and moving, a series of gears that stem from the highest to the lowest order. But that's a talk for a different day.